Welcome to Late to the Show. I'm your host, Prophet74, and today I'm going to bring something that you guys are going to like for your Vive, HTC Vive. So take a look at it. It's called the TPCast. So this has been a while, for maybe almost half a year already since it was announced. But it wasn't announced here. It was announced mostly in Japan, China, and Europe, and now it's here in the US. Original price was $250. If you want it faster, it would have cost you double, $450. Or in some places even more. So it was announced in December 15. It was going to be being produced for the US. But now we're going to take a look at it here. We're going to take a look at it, what you guys get in the US. This is a US version of it. There's a Chinese version, there's a European version. Now this is the US version. So let's take a look at it. Let's open it up first. So you get this fancy box and it tells you exactly what's in it. You're going to get a battery, the charging station, and the actual pouch where you connect all the stuff. And then you actually get the wireless also too. So and the wireless actually antenna. You need an antenna. And I'm going to show you exactly how it's set up. So we're going to open it up here. So we're going to open it up here. First of all, you get the little charging station, actually the actual connection where all the cables and the batteries go to. So this is where the actual battery connects to and it charges up to. So there is a USB connection and a power connection in the bottom of this. And then you get the main part of it. This actually mounts up on top of the actual Vive connection, and we're going to set it up too. So we're going to put this up right now. And it has 2B and 1C because they're number and name, because to set it up, the instructions, they actually give you some information how to set it up. So let's take a look at it now. Now, this is the actual antenna. You need to connect this somewhere on the line of sight. So it needs to be somewhere where you're going to be playing in front of it. It could be a fourth antenna or three antennas if you have one of those two adapters. So this has to be mounted somewhere higher than you, pretty much. It can't be a level line. It has to be a little higher than you. It has to be pretty much raining down on the connection. And this is the actual signal where the wireless actually feeds back, right? Now, we do get the power supply, of course. This is actually the battery. And the battery, they give you one battery only. But the battery is pretty much a battery you can use not only for this system, but you can actually charge phones and other devices in here. It has a lot of amps, and it's pretty much a heavy duty battery. And they give you this, and they give you the actual charging USB. It's a micro USB, so it connects right in front of it. And there's two USB connections, of course. Now these two USB connections actually sit well on the system, and once they logged in, there's two batteries. There's two actual indicators saying that there's two cells occupied. It might be less than an hour or so of charging, or an hour, but I'm not quite sure how long they last right now. This is set to last almost an hour when you're playing the game, but just to be sure, it's good to have a backup, because they take a long time to charge these things. Right now there's 2 bars on it out of 4, so we have a good charge right now. And you see how to release, there it is. So you get all this right in front of me. Now, like I said, you get the charger. This is a USB, a micro USB that charges the battery. It connects here in the back of it. Connects it, and you plug it into your charging station if you want. Now you get something more than what you bargained for, and it's a little bit more complicated with this thing, because it's just not a plug-and-play system. It's something you have to set up and take your time to it. One other thing that it's a mandatory must thing, is you have to get this little pouch. This is the pouch that you carry, and it has a belt clip thing too for your belt, so you could be playing and running around with this thing. It's pretty neat. They give you the cables, the actual cables that connect from the Vive all the way to the battery base, which is this system here. And they actually come up from this to the Vive station, to the wireless device, the TPCast, on top of it, from the Vive connection. So they give you an extra connections here. Now they do give you a belt now. Before I didn't have it. Now they're issuing a belt. Now this is the part that gets a little more complicated on this. Now the complication is that you also get a router. Yeah, folks, a router. It's a freaking internet router. That's what you get. But this is not just any internet router. It's a router made for this system, and it's a TPCast router, and it connects like every single typical router at home. You got that blue connection where the line goes in it, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4 connections for additional bandwidths that you want to use. So this is a little bit more complicated for users that are trying to, you know, learn this system. But this is just pretty much made for this device to feed off of it, and it bounces and it integrates it needs one to work with the other. So you do need two of them. You need this and a good line of sight because it has 2 antennas right there that they give you, and it tells you 5G and 2.4G, of course. So the most important thing that I always think about when I get these things is the manual. Now the manual is very important because there's a couple things how to set it up. If you're not familiar with this, you're gonna have to consult with this a lot, because this is not just something that you can just plug and play. If you're not familiar with any networking or any battery balancing or anything like this, you need to consult your manual. Also with the wireless connections, they're not very stable on some of the time, so you want to make sure you have a good line of sight between this item, which is your router, and this, which is the actual relay signal. So you got to make sure these two are not being blocked in any kind of way. This could be blocked, but this one right here is very mandatory to have. Now this one has to be bouncing pretty much as the middleman. This is where you're going to be playing. This actually picks up the signal. This sends the signal to this one, and this one sends the signal back to this. Now on this site, you need a power cord and actually the HDMI connection that connects to your computer. So you are gonna need, it gets a little complicated. You need a line of sight to all these things. So it's pretty neat. It's untangled. There's no wireless. The whole setup is pretty neat. Let me turn off these noisy little things I have. The only thing I wouldn't like about this thing was that there's a couple of buzzing noise coming out of that little receiver, the actual HDMI receiver. That's the only thing that I was probably a little disappointed, because you could hear it when it's pretty quiet out here. But right now it's morning, there's daylight, there's birds, I hear other things, so you can't really hear the buzzing sound. Other than that, the whole unit itself, the wire, it's a little too short maybe. Give you some more slack so you could maybe move it the other way or something. But it depends how you put the belt on, and the belt, it has a belt clip it comes with. It's not that bad. It's a pretty neat little system. I recommend you buy maybe 2 batteries. Now a little thing that I am a little concerned, it overheats here on the top. You could actually feel it. It's a little hot. The battery's hot, so it's one of the things that I'm a little concerned. You know, ever since the Samsung blow batteries, so it's one of the things that you guys want to make sure that you be aware of how hot it gets. Too many playing time hours. I mean, I'll be concerned. Like for example, if you're playing with any Doom game, or you're playing with the Skyrim, those long games that you're gonna play for a couple hours, I'm a little concerned about that. Other than that, the weight on the helmet doesn't contribute at all. It's pretty light. The helmet itself is a little, the whole case itself is pretty heavy as it is, but the top of it, it's real light. I don't really feel anything. Actually, in fact, I feel less light because I removed the no component. The actual plastic was actually heavier. The only thing about the wireless, you can't put the mic on USB. You cannot. So you need another source of USB somewhere else. Other than that, the headsets, speakers work well. I could hear everything exactly like I could if I had a wire. Another thing is that I like about the whole system itself is unique. You just put it somewhere. You could hang it somewhere, and it's ready to go. Just make sure you have your battery set. I'm always charging another battery. It takes a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours to fully charge a battery. The batteries are inexpensive. You could buy 3 or 4 batteries and keep them in hand. So if guests come in or you're going to be filming a lot, then you want to make sure you have a lot of this stuff in hand. Other than that, I mean, it works well. It picked up really simple with the actual HDMI Vive. Another concern I had when I was installing the application, the TPCast, had a little issue where you have to make sure it matches your component here. So one thing that they tell you to sync it up, there's a button here and a button on the actual receiver that you hold down together, and they have to sync up. It's like a Bluetooth kind of sync. So once they sync up together, it flashes differently Like right now it's solid, it means it has a connection. You gotta turn on the application before you start anything else, before you even start the Vive. The application starts up, and I had difficulties. I had to reboot a couple of times, but the application worked successfully after like the third time. I turned off everything, I replugged everything, and it worked well. So it's one of the things that you gotta make sure that you're aware of before you start setting this up. If you have problems with it, there is a lot of people having problems with this system because it's not 100% secure. It still has a little issues. The router, for example, they give you a password, username and password. You could, if you have a wireless system and you're going to be streaming through it, you need to connect to the same router, either by wire or by wireless. So if you have your home router, you're going to have to forget about that. You have to connect directly to this router in order to make this thing work. If that's not connected, it's not going to work. So that's a mandatory thing you got to do. So other than that, it's a great device. I recommend it. It's on the US now. It's available. It took a while from China all the way to the US. And the US version is not the big difference other than the language and the barrier that they had of all the manuals, but everything's up, else is working. So if you guys like what you see, subscribe to Late to the Show. I'm your host, Prophet74, out.